Okay, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit so you know who's talking to you. Yes, I am the current Empress, sorry Princess, Empress Mikey, I'm the Empress of Casa de Loco, which is what we have named our very suburban triangular yard, which we bought about 5 years ago, my Navy husband. I have 2 kids that I try to ignore as much as possible to go out in the yard, a pug, 4 cats, and now fish in my fountain. And I would say about myself, oh yes, that when we moved there, we had some stuff going on, and I rapidly started to shove stuff in the ground, everything that was edible. And throughout the course of a couple of years, we've established that I know a little bit about a lot, but not a lot about a little. So edible landscaping is really where my heart is. If anybody, I got all excited when I was doing this because I'm like, what do I tell you? What do I tell you? You guys know so much already. So this is where I'm going to share what I learned and also gain some information from you. Okay, edible landscapes defined is fairly, oh, here it is, sorry. My notes are over here and the thing is over here. It's fairly simple. It is taking your landscape and adding something that both provides form and function to it. A lot of people start off with their beautiful suburban yards with 2 palms and 4 bushes. And there's and of course, the lawn. Side note, I'm not a lawn girl. So you can do many things with edibles, introducing them into your landscape. However, one of the things you want to keep in mind is that you are combining form and function. The history of edible landscaping. We went to a 2-day seminar on edible landscaping, which was too long. So I'm cramming everything that we learned into some minutes here. However, I did take away from it, and I didn't understand at the time how valuable it was to kind of understand the history about edible landscaping. I thought, what do I care? No, really, what do I care? Well, when you look back historically at English gardens and Italian Renaissance gardens, you can see there was such beauty in it. And they combined beauty with food growing, which is my own personal goal. And I'm sure a lot of you want to do the same because we're all here for the same reason, to garden and be married, pretty much. I will add that historically in the U.S., besides the Victory Gardens, which are, I think everybody know about the Victory Gardens? Pretty much. In addition to the Victory Gardens, before the Victory Gardens, in our earliest settlements, like Colonial Williamsburg, and we've been there, Sturbridge Village, everything on the East Coast, sorry, Old Town doesn't count, I'm sorry, it's just not that old. They might have done stuff, but people were doing it over there way longer. There were edibles within the landscapes there. In Colonial Williamsburg, that's where I was married, so it's a little bit in my heart. There are still edibles everywhere throughout the landscape for form and function. They didn't have Vons, Kroger, anything to go to. I'm just going to do, there we go. Yep, sorry, okay. I'm not used to this thing. So the pros of an edible landscape versus a traditional landscape. I love that you all said lawn. Like, it was not something that you can do much with. A traditional landscape, especially here in Southern California, why we have lawn, that just escapes me. The pros are that you're getting food that's very close to your doorstep. Your food doesn't travel as much. You know, for the most part, what's happened to it. You've nurtured it from the ground up, and you can partake of your own goodness. One of the biggest things that I like about edible gardening is the talk factor. I have some fruit trees and some some herbs, sorry, no vegetables at the moment, in my front yard. And if you want to get to know your neighbors, edibles are the way to go. You put an edible there, and people will walk back. Is that an apple tree? Yes, and it's a good way to meet your neighbors. You can also, I'm trying not to repeat thousands of things that you just heard in the previous session, but it really does encourage biodiversity. I have more little critter visitors now some invited, some not, that I didn't have before, because I've introduced things that flower. Everything that flowers, who knew? I didn't know that a couple years ago. Everything that flowers attracts something. They all visit, and they all come say hello. So it's created this whole little ecosystem to where my almost 18-year-old son will be like, Mom, what that thing's doing? I'm like, yes. Huge victory, huge victory. So the cons of edible landscaping versus traditional landscaping are obviously, or not obviously. If you're putting something in the ground that's going to produce food, it has a lot more requirements than 2 palms, 4 bushes, and a lawn. They have different water requirements, different seasonal requirements. We'll talk more about that. And it just takes more time. More time, maybe a little more money, a little more energy, and certainly, above all, it takes more planning. I will show you some slides at the end. This is not my yard. Is everybody familiar with this picture? This is that woman. She, what's above Empress? I don't even know. Queen of the world? Rosalind Creasy. I think her name. Creasy? Creasy? She creates things like that. That is not my yard. Her yard is up north. We don't have that kind of soil, I don't think, here. Perhaps, has anybody seen anything like this here in San Diego? Okay, good. I was hoping that was the right answer. I didn't miss it. Because I've been driving around trying to find you pictures of like this stuff. Can't really find it. We're going to have to be the pioneers here. So it really, really, really does require a lot of effort to get it going. But it's so, so worth it. The only other thing I would say that would be a con is that I have never, she's got some zucchini-esque squashes things. I have never grown a pumpkin or a squash that doesn't turn on me with powdery mildew in 5 years that I've been here. And I have tried all the elixirs, the things that UC says and the things that, Papa Joe said. And I am terrified of putting something in my front yard in an edible landscape setting that's going to turn on me and have people go, what is that? So there is the ugly factor. It's just flat out the ugly factor. When you're doing edible landscaping, you have to keep in mind, could this turn on me? Is this perhaps the best thing I could do here? Or do I have the time to be vigilant on it? Okay, planning and design. Equal parts fun and frustration. My own personal story with this is that I took out my lawn. I Nan Sturmaned it all the way. I laid down this and I did this, and then that didn't really work because I was on a compressed timetable, so we hoed that up. Now, I live in Eastlake, which is suburbia gone wrong in many, many ways. They took a tractor, plowed off the good earth, and then smashed the rest of it to put our houses so they don't sink into holes. And then they laid sod on top of it. But it seems like they laid sod that's about 7 feet deep. I didn't understand that sod is just an amazing structure. To get through the sod, we had to get the sod out. And then we had a 10 by 15 open pallet. There is nothing more frightening in the world to somebody that is not a landscape designer, which I am not, as an open pallet of what do I do now? My neighbors must be tired of looking at the dirt for 2-3 weeks while I decide. So this was a big challenge. Luckily, my Master Gardener handbook that you all have. Oh, Sandy, you brought yours. Good, good. It's always a challenge to decide, do I love it, do I not love it? Am I going to need it? They did have a particular section about landscape design. Raise your hand. Do we have designers in the house? I'm sure. Nobody's like a certified, nobody? Wow. We had several in our class. I was so daunted by them because they knew all these things that don't come naturally to me. I am Princess Random. Yes, that looks good. It's like decorating a cake. Give me 30 minutes, I'm done. None of this, where does the flower go? I'm in and out. You can't do that with edible landscaping. It doesn't like that. It doesn't look good. So everything on this list you should pay attention to in some respect. I will say that I love all of this, and sometimes I hit it. I picked up some of this when I worked for architects also, so I've been able to carry it with me. I will say that as far as scale goes, too many plants of the same size skew things. Too many plants of the same colors, unless you want a monochromatic garden, skew things. You really, really, really have to pay attention to all of these. What I did, what worked for me, is that I brought the little guys home, and I sat there for another 3 weeks, moving them around. I had fruit trees too, so I moved the herbs around. I had some herbs, some flowers, and some fruit trees. And I would make my children come out and stand and say, go like this, and now do this, so that I could see how big they were going to be and what would be under them. And then I'd move them around. And I will say that even after I did all that and I planted them in the ground, I still moved at least 6 things once, even after they were in. And I do have pictures of my before and my after, and I'm kind of proud now because it looks like somebody that likes gardening lives there. And it's not Rosalind crazy worthy, but I'm on my way. So I feel like, okay, at least I can get up here and be like, I have done this. So kind of proud about that. Planning. Make sure that you do all the things that Johnny and everybody told you about your soil. You know, check it out. Make sure you know what you're going to do in your soil. Make sure that the site is right. What else is there where you're considering doing something? Is it on the side of your house where there's nothing? Is the gas meter there? Should you block the air conditioner with a fruit tree? There's all these things that could be in your ground, on your perimeter, that you should take into account when you do your site assessment. This is just some interesting ways that you can actually use edibles to accent an area. You can create like a little, I call this a tree tunnel from when my kid was little canopies where you can make a tree tunnel. You can use edibles to make a hedge. I used to call them parterres. A nice carpet, we were talking in the last session about, you know, what can I use to cover a slope, and they make, or herbs especially, make wonderful carpets. Containers are part of edible landscaping. If you can eat something out of it and it resides outside of your home, it counts. So if somebody just has a patio and you get a call on the hotline and they're like, I have 4 feet of sun, what can I do? I live, you know, by here and I want to grow something. Containers, they're definitely the way to go. Before you grow, what you should know about your soil and water and shade that is. I wanted to say lions and tigers and bears because they're the things that personally I don't want to consider. In my world, when I started gardening in San Diego, foolishly I believed that I was going to reinvent gardening. That I was going to be the one that came here and nothing in those books applied to my world. We had sun, we had dirt, and I had water. What more did I need? I was in, you know, as I say, I've only been here like 10 years. I grew up on the East Coast. I've been in Washington. There's snow. There's all these things. I can grow year-round. So I just shove stuff in the ground. Big mistake. Thousands of dollars down the tubes. So when you are considering putting anything edible into your ground, you have to remember that once you put it in the ground, it needs extra things. Maybe it needs extra fertilizer. Maybe it needs amendments from the top. It's expecting, unless it's an annual crop, not to be touched. If you put an edible here that is a perennial, and then you put an annual next to it, and you plan on yanking those out, that's going to make those roots mad. There are lots of things that you need to think about when you're working with your ground. Have you gotten to the part in your, this is one of the pieces that I picked up from my training with the Master Gardeners, is that there's 2 schools of thought. There's amend your soil before you put the dirt in, and then there's the second one, which is put your plant in native soil and top dress it. And I will say that with my, before I was a Master Gardener plants, that I amended, I dug that planting hole, and I put all that organic matter in, they've all sunken and rotted in my fairly East County yard. The plants that are doing great and thriving are the ones that I followed And Vince said, just dig the hole, put them in the native soil, and put stuff on top. And those have not sunk, and they're doing better. They're not going to win any awards. Nobody's going to be in a flower show yet, but they look much, much better. So make sure that you have at least thought about what you're going to do with that space over time and what's going to be next to. It's kind of like partnering kids again in preschool and knowing which ones get along with each other and then separating the ones that you know you have to keep your eye on. Again, we talked about fertilizer. Might need a little bit more. Container growing, very nice. Another thing I learned as a master gardener, that you have to leach your potting mix. Run water over it for a time period to bleach everything that's funky out so that it becomes a more hospitable medium. The other thing that I just found out recently through the Master Gardener program is that container plants, even if you top dress them, they will still go down. And you need to uncontainer them and add fresh soil. You don't knock all the fresh soil off, but you put them back in with that soil that they're all tucked in with, and then you add more soil so that you don't have your little tree or whatever getting much lower and much lower. I will highly recommend for edible landscaping, and UC definitely says this, that compost is awesome, however you can get it. Worms, not worms. No animal manures that are pig or pet. Actually, it never occurred to me that somebody used pet manure, but I guess. Chicken manure, everybody loves. Horse manure, make sure you have your tetanus shot. I'm not going to tell you about that. Mulches are a great idea because when you are putting edibles in, their roots, when you first put them in, are fairly close to the surface. And mulches, even if you have to buy the bag junk, it keeps your soil more stable. It keeps your water that you're dumping on this thing that you want to eat much, much, much cozier. So I am a big fan of mulch and having somebody else put it down like teenagers for me. Because mulch, and I have done the whole thing where I had my trees cut and shredded and had a mulch mountain on my driveway. I will never do that again. I have never hurt so much all over my body as when I moved a mountain of mulch. So however you can get it on there, whatever you can get, add a little mulch. See if you like it. See if you like it. Water application. This is where I have some, this is what I would say. Okay, first year I was here. This is called Don't Do What I Did. First year I was here, I decided, I am not paying to redo irrigation. That is a waste of my money. I am not going to redo irrigation. I'm going to hand water everything. You all are laughing. This was you like 5 years ago when everybody was like, oh, that's a good idea. All my neighbors who had 2 palms, 4 bushes, and a lawn. Oh, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Paying for somebody to come in and run your irrigation right and to talk to you about what you want is great. Before those people come in, you need to know whatever you plant, what the water needs are. And that requires research, and that's part of your planning plan. Is, okay, so I'm putting this in. This needs more water than this. So maybe this guy over here gets these. You haven't done your irrigation class yet. Oh, you had? Oh my God, that was my favorite one. I couldn't believe how unbored I was. I thought, oh, yawn, I'm so... this was the most amazing thing to me. The little drip, the tubing. I now have it everywhere. I'm also a big fan of, not sprinklers, because sprinklers sprinkle water and make my plants angry. I'm a big fan of what I call the little pop-up guys that have a little spray. And I have those all throughout. Because those just make me happy because I can see the water. So some of it is that I'm a very visual person and need to know that the water's going on my plants. These, I have to get a little too close. And I listen. Okay. And then I lift them up to make sure that they're doing their job. But getting your irrigation right for edibles, you will get that kickback in better production. Because I'm a former fruit tree murderer. There should be a club, like Fruit Tree Murderers is Anonymous. Because all I heard for the first couple of years when I moved here was, don't overwater. I should have figured out where I was. Has anybody ever killed anything here by overwatering it in the ground? Probably not. At least I haven't. I underwatered and killed many things, many things. So irrigation, know your plant, know what its irrigation needs are, and pair it effectively, and pay to play. Definitely pay. Make those little guys driving around with the little irrigation things happy. Or do it yourself. Not my plan, but... okay, so this is where it gets fun. I really feel like edible landscaping is endless. And when I was researching for this beyond what I learned in our 2-day seminar, was that there's really not a lot out there you see pushed, you see researched on what is the perfect combination of edibles. So as you consider this in your master gardenership and as you consider this in your own homes and talking to the public, really there's a lot of it that you get to research and find out what works for you. So you get to do all this fun stuff, which is get to implement design. You can go organic if you want. You can do low maintenance. You can do native. You can do permaculture, which I'm not, I don't have a permaculture thing on me, but I really do think it's very cool, the whole interrelated. You can do companion planting, even if there's no research behind it. It's still fun. You can plant by the moon. You can do all that stuff that, some of us go, but I look at my almanac on occasion and see when it's a good idea to maybe plant something under the ground, just because, what if it helps? You don't have to till. You can do the same thing that you do in your garden beds you can do in your landscape beds. You just have to adapt it. So it's really endless possibilities for you to take something that is sort of a monoculture of homeostasis and nothing ever changes in that landscape, and add things that seasonally pop with color or lose their leaves or branch out and give fruit at some point and attract things. You can add so much life to your life by just throwing in some new stuff here and there. Okay. And this is where you just get to choose. And the person that you're talking to on the phone, because I have been asked at the fair several times, what should I plant? What should I plant? What do you like? We had that same question. Just make sure that you understand that the rules apply. The same rules that Johnny talked about for gardening in your gardening boxes and growing vegetables, just plain old vegetables, apply for fruit trees, herbs, and veg that you incorporate into your landscape, whether it's front yard, side yard, or whatever. You have to make sure that they get enough sun. You have to make sure that they have water. You also have to know how they're going to grow and how their roots are going to grow. I will say that this is a hard thing to learn, even in your vegetable garden. Choose varieties that suit you the best. If you only like yellow peppers and you want to see yellow peppers in your front yard, only grow yellow peppers. Whatever works for you. However, you can up your success rate if you do, and this is again, don't do what I did, which is I'm very adverse to doing the research on what I'm planting. I want to go that day, I want to get what they have, I want it to be the perfect plant for my area, and I want the garden gods to just bless this plant so that when I put it in, all is magical and nothing ever happens. So I don't do the research because I want maybe organic or I want the heirloom. I don't do the research for, which ones are disease resistant. Sometimes I'm lucky. Sometimes I'm very lucky. But there have been many years where I put things in, even just herbs, that just bit it so fast that I'm like, disease resistance. Now I get it. $4. Added to the coffers kind of thing. Let's see. Site selection, always important. You can't, it's there. I have a Meyer lemon just about under the canopy of an olive tree. So that wasn't a good idea. But it's not completely dead, so I haven't yanked it yet. And I'm not sure if I transplant it now if it'll survive. So it just doesn't ever produce for me. but it's there. It's about yay big. It's never grown any bigger. It doesn't get enough sun, and it gets pelted by 3 billion little olives that fall on the ground. We'll talk about that. You can use vegetables or fruits as ground covers and as visual screens. Some of the coolest things that I've learned being a master gardener, you know about the charrettes. The charrettes. Have you been to Charette yet? Can they go to charrettes here? Yeah? The charrettes, the design charrettes are very interesting because that's when people come out of the woodwork to give you their ideas about stuff. And I'm actually going to pull some information from you. One of the neatest things I ever heard about at a charrette was using apple trees. You plant them at an X as a natural fence to cover up an ugly fence. You literally put them in the ground like this. They cross and they bloom. You have apples and you have privacy, which is truly an amazing concept. I have passion fruit, not passion flower, but passion fruit on a fence. It does the same thing. It doesn't require anything of me, and it's visually stunning until I have to cut it back in February. And then it takes a crane and 6 people to move all that stuff out. This is just pretty pictures. I threw some pretty pictures in because I thought, oh, come on, have some pretty pictures. Edible ground covers. Here's a listing. You all have this. This is on the site. Some of you know this. These would be ones for you to research. Who asked this question? Whoever asked the, what can I plant as a cover crop? This might be something that you're interested in because you can set it and forget it. Mint creeping? Woo! Guess who the genius was that planted mint in her front yard? Guess who's going to be pulling it out and whose great-grandchildren will be pulling it out? My neighbor loves it because she makes a lot of dishes. But I tell her, well, don't pick the mint in the front. That's the pee-pee mint. Because the dogs all, you know. So I said, you have to go under the mallow tree and get up in there with the bees that are all around and get the little guys that have come up. So mint. I should have knocked that off, but it's a topic for discussion. Peanuts. Has anybody ever grown peanuts? No. Okay, you get to hear my peanut story. Peanuts are gorgeous, but they don't grow up. They don't grow. They grow underground. Mm-hmm. I lived in Virginia for 9 years. I never picked up that tidbit. I planted peanuts because they had them at Walter Anderson's. Bam, 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 bam. Peanuts. My sister comes, who plants peanuts? I'm like, I don't know, but they're not growing. Because I would go like this to them. There were no peanuts. Because I had soybeans in the back. And the soybeans, they were there. Damn. Peanuts. Yeah, $4. It was like 20 bucks in peanuts. Finally, I'm like, oh, let's just rip them out. Pull them out. There they are. At the bottom, I started screaming. My kids and my husband come running because they think I've chopped myself up or something like that in the garden or injured myself. I am screaming because I grew peanuts. And they do provide a very, very nice ground cover. And they don't require, obviously they don't require anything. I just watered them. And we want to talk about something that tastes good. Those were good. Homemade peanuts. So peanuts would be definitely something you can pick up for $3 and have some fun with something. You'd be like, check this out, look what I did. So I'm kind of known in the family as the one who grew peanuts and think I'm pretty amazing for that. And I think I'm pretty handsome too. Sweet potato is another one where sweet potato is unbelievably easy to grow. And it looks like, to me, English ivy. Mm-hmm. Somebody that knows plant names, and it just goes. And then you really, from one little sweet potato root, can get an amazing number of sweet potatoes. But it would be, and they're set it and forget it. They seem to not care if you leave them in the ground for 6 months. They're still there hanging out for you. It was very, very interesting when I finally pulled underneath the vines. I thought I was just going to be ripping off vines, and I thought there's nothing there under these gorgeous green glossy vines. There they were. And we made sweet potato dolls. Anybody do that as a kid? Mm-hmm. This is back in the 70s, you know, when we were bored and didn't have, anything but Hasbro. You would dress with my mom. We would take little sweet potatoes and put little hair on them and make little clothes for them. And they would be like sweet Sweet potato dolls, really. So you can make sweet potato dolls from your own board. See, we're having fun. Edible herb borders, again, Rosalind, love her. Not sure that's ever going to be my yard. That looks like it requires a lot of water. And I'm not sure. I'm going to try. I'm headed there, but I'm not sure that I'm ever going to put lettuce somewhere where people are going to be walking by it. And I do have a pet, so you do have to watch out for your pets. These are just some beauties that are edible flowers. The top is rose, gladiolus, lilac, scented geranium. Let's see, we've got a daylily in there, a dianthus, bee balm, which is probably one of my favorite things to say, and nasturtiums, which I do have. And I did hear that nasturtiums are extremely invasive and everywhere. You ever go to Charlie Robinson's? His entire place is nasturtium up, and I have a corner where there seem to be staying put. I have to admit, I haven't ever eaten one that I know. I know. And now I need to branch. I'm going to do it. And I'll go home and I'll see if I'll eat one. I'll eat one. Ah, fruit trees. Okay. If there's one thing I love, it's fruit trees. Fruit trees make me so happy. Scott mentioned the 4-H, and I was like, oh yeah, 4-H. I wanted to be an FFA girl so bad. I lived in a condo with my parents. My dad's a businessman. My mom's a social worker. There is not a lot of farming in my blood. Anybody that did anything ag just was fancy to me. So fruit trees are where I get my true ag on. It is edible landscaping, but when I plant fruit trees, I imagine myself in Oregon at one of those orchards you can go to in the summer and the fruit just falls off the tree. I'm not there yet. But please, when you plant a fruit tree, do your research. Starting with, how big is it going to get? What do I have to do to it 4 times a year or 5 times a year? Is it the kind of fruit tree, I didn't know this before, that loses its leaves or doesn't lose its leaves? That matters if you're going to put it somewhere where people are, you don't want it to look seasonal, where you want it to look like my guava does. My guava does not lose leaves. It's kind of fancy like that. I'm like, that's very nice of you to not lose your leaves. I'll get another. So I got a strawberry guava as a friend because my apple loses its leaves, my olives only lose the olives. And make sure that you understand that where you put a fruit tree, if you're going to do it in a landscaping setting like near a house, those roots are going to go, and you don't want to plant it too close to your house. If it's a fig. Figs are the big one that really take over the world. I have not done it because I have enough to manage when a tree is here and a tree is here, but they will come and talk to you about putting 4 trees in a hole. Yeah. I haven't done it. I'm scared. I did branch out and get one of those Frankenstein 4-in-1 grafted trees. I did it. Ooh, it was really hard for me. I don't think of myself as that much of a purist on anything. That was really hard to know that there were 4 different children on this particular tree. But I did it. So let me share, what's in my yard. I've got an avocado that was there when I started, a very beautiful peach, a strawberry tree. Does anybody know what a strawberry tree is? It's very arbutus something fancy like that. Thank you. I don't know plant names yet. That's my next thing when I get my son off to college. I'm going to learn plant names. It's very beautiful. Doesn't lose its leaves. Gives you these little apricot-y, guava, mealy fun things that I've tried to make them into jam. They didn't make jam very well, but it's really a slow-growing, beautiful kind of, that would be the shape of it. I have a Mexican guava. That was what I had when I moved in. Then I added a peach and nectarine. The nectarine variety was sad. It was a double delight. It was amazing. I killed about 5 different types of citrus. And I just planted, I have a Fuji apple, a 4-in-1 apple, 2 persimmons, 2 cherry trees, a jujube that my husband, when I took him to the nursery, picked out a jujube because it said tastes like candy. And I have another peach and 2 figs in pots and a lemonade tree. So fruit trees is really where I am. I am no expert, but I am on my way. Let's see. It is very important when choosing a tree or anything that you know what shape it's going to be. I didn't actually understand until I went and did my research that, peaches are like this, apples are like this, and it really makes a difference when you plant a tree close to something. If it's going to always need to spread like this, or if it's going to go down. Probably my favorite showcase tree in my yard that I didn't mention is my mulberry tree that grows like hair, which is very, very, very beautiful and gets a lot of attention. Low maintenance fruit species. I'm just going to cross that out. Low maintenance, if you really do your research and you know what you're doing, you plan it well. Everything takes time. There's no way of getting around that edible landscaping is a labor-intensive love affair of sorts with things that you want to eat and pop into your mouth and show off to your neighbors since you're so fancy because you have pink things and blue things. Oh, I have a ton of blueberries too, I will say that. Pomegranates, I have heard people complain that pomegranates make too many shoots and they require too much pruning. I'm like, okay, but they're so pretty. And the fruit just stays there and doesn't plop and drop, which is very nice. Serious problems with fruit trees, there's a whole book on that. There's 2 books actually. You've got pests and you've got abiotic disorders. Make sure you do your research on your fruit tree before you put it in. And make sure you tell people and you direct them to the websites that have that information for them. It's very important. Water and land use policies. Okay, so we're going to kind of close up this. This is where, again, I didn't think this was like something that was necessary, but it really is interesting when you start to think about how we here in San Diego County, we have microclimates, but we have like micro associations too. We have city, I'm as suburbs as you can get. Johnny's out there in what I call the country, but they call the country desert or something like that. And then there are people in Julian, which I think is like the high desert. We have so many different needs for water and so many different lack of restrictions and restrictions for our land use. So this is what they shared, and I will share with you, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. There are, of course, policies related to water use. Everybody is, whoops, oh, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. I think that's where it stops. Obviously, there are laws on the books and pricing on the books with dollar signs that has to do with how much water you use and where you are in the county and what you can do with your water. There's actually, certainly if you do rainwater collection, which this year might have been a really good thing. You know, we actually had some, I feel like we had rain this year. Maybe people disagree, but no. I have had some seriously dry years here. Okay. But we had some rain. I am now, yes, but if I had had a rain barrel, I would be happier because it would be full this year. I think at some point it would have filled up. Every time I thought about buying it, I was like, oh, it's not. So I do not have a rainwater collection system yet. Gray water, I think everybody knows, and I think the current, not legislation, but train of thought, because gray water is not regulated other than for them to say you can't do it at your house if you're not, if they know about it, basically, is that you shouldn't ever put it on anything edible. That seems to be, I don't think there's anything printed, at least at the UC status, that says go gray water. And I don't know that that's going to change. So that's one thing. This is very interesting. I didn't know about this. I think that's where it ends. There is something, if you're going to do a big build, you know, some of these mega, I call them the mega houses where there's like 8 bathrooms and things like that. If your property is so big, you actually have to go through a separate permit process for you to actually show and tell what you're planting and how much water you're going to use so that you don't take it away from us, because we all use water really well all the time. So I did think that was really interesting. And I don't know, I'm not sure what my lot is, but it's not any of those. So that was, I thought that, I call it Muello, but I thought that was very interesting. I was like, oh. I mean, I know that they have tiers for water, but I didn't know that they actually had this at the permit level, which made me really happy, because those giga houses that go up, they bother me at a socio-economic level. Oops, there we go. Oh, keep going. I don't know what I hit, but let's try. Well, it'll start it over. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, here, I'm going to put these all up. Oops. Okay. HOAs. I am wildly familiar with HOAs because boy did I make them mad when I killed my grass. I didn't know that you couldn't just kill your grass and just do what you wanted. It's like I'm not tearing up anything, I'm just changing an existing landscape. If you're talking to somebody on the helpline and they say, which is the question I've gotten, which I thought was hysterical, do you think if I do this my HOA is going to be upset? I'm like, well, I'm sure there's a big fat book that will tell you. Because when I moved into my house, they gave me a big fat book. I like it because it means that I don't have to look out and see, you know, a couch or, you know, a broken car. It's kind of nice to not do that. However, I have had fights with them over exactly what I'm going to plant, exactly what I'm going to change. And so that's been, they can't say that I can't put fruit trees in my yard, but there are local ordinances. Whoops. Where did my local ordinances go? Oh, wait. I think I have to click one more. Oh. Byron, help me.
No.
There. Okay. I lost a slide somewhere, unless it's coming up next. Okay, well, we'll just carry on. Oh, nuisance laws. That's where it is. If you plant something that is too close to a sidewalk and it drops fruit and somebody gets hurt, you're in a lot of trouble with this law. If you plant a beautiful branching tree that grows up and a child comes into your yard or into your space and climbs up it and falls out of your beautiful tree, you are in trouble. So there are nuisance laws that protect society from your errant edible landscaping, and don't you forget it, because it would really, really be sad if somebody slipped on your stone fruit. So when you make your choices and when you suggest to somebody and you ask them, what are you going to plant? Where are you going to plant it? Where's the causeway that people that aren't related to you walk? Is it going to hang over into your neighbor's yard where they have sensitivities? Is fruit going to drop in their yard? Have you strategically... I have a peach tree that plops... I didn't plant it, so that's my claim. I'm like, I was here when I moved in. I have a peach tree that even if I sculpt it, it's right against the fence, and it just makes a mess on their side because they don't enjoy the fruit. It just makes a mess. They haven't complained yet. So I'm like, okay, it's on your yard. I'm not going to go clean up my peach goo because you just won't pick it up when it's ripe and it plops. So there are nuisance laws on the books, and we had one of our speakers at the Master Gardener meeting came and talked for like an hour on that. So harvest, storage, and food safety. I'm kind of going to just flick through this because Johnny hit it. She talked about clean buckets. The only thing that I will say related to edible landscaping is that edible landscaping is not for food that you can sell. You can donate it, and there are laws regarding how you can donate it and where you can donate it. So the agency, if you're so lucky to get a bushel crop, which will be me in about 10 years because the kids will be gone and you heard all those fruits, I'm going to, just 10 years, let's just make a date. I'm going to have more fruit because I'm going to be so successful, and I will be donating, I guarantee. I have set myself up for that. So there's a lot that has to do with food safety that is common knowledge. Washing up buckets, cutting things. Johnny and everybody talked about that. They did. Oh, I love this slide. This was cute. As a reminder, especially if you're going to have kids with you and you're creating an edible landscaping with kids involved, is to teach them how to pick your fruit. Every child that comes into my yard knows you don't touch Miss Jill's fruit until she says you can. Because nothing torques me more than when a kid pulls off a peach off a tree that's not ready. You have to ask permission. And let me tell you how you twist it up and don't take the spur. Don't take my next year. So you do have to train your people to behave with the fruit. I'm a little mean, but that's okay. I'm just, they know, but boy, when they can sit and eat those peaches and whipped cream on a May day, they're pretty happy. So also, I didn't touch on it earlier, wherever you plant, make sure you know your PP zones. Make sure you know where the dogs are going to pass. And if you're going to eat it, either consider having it just for visual or put some sort of protection up or just realize that there is a pee-pee zone. There is a dogs will, if they can, they'll get to it. The other thing that I didn't touch on is that all this edible landscaping does encourage wildlife in a major way. I, for some reason, have yet, give me something, yet to have a gopher in my yard. I have a fence that the raccoons don't seem to come over my fence. It's a fashion fence too. We do have coyotes. They seem to go after cats, not fruit. But maybe half a mile away, my friend has a slope planted with every fruit tree imaginable, and she just feeds them like Cinderella because she never gets a fruit. All her oranges have rat holes in them, and the birds just pillage from her cherry trees, and she never gets anything. It's sad. I do not do bird netting. It's a feast of famine. It's just going to be what it's going to be in my yard. So, skipping next, we talked about donation. I want to get to my fun lab. The end. The end is really just the beginning. I mean, I hope if you took away a couple tidbits today, most of this is like preaching to the choir. Everybody here has put their hands in dirt. Everybody has probably grown something that they can eat. But it's looking at this and encouraging the more people that we can get in San Diego to just stick something that they can eat in their ground, the closer we are back to that whole Colonial Williamsburg kind of thing, like, oh, you have a lemon tree, you have a peach tree. That's so cool.